Hey folks, I've had more than a few people ask that I cover Billy String's Dust in a Baggie again, but that this time I talk about the living room performance, and that's what we're going to do today. If you're a Billy Strings fan, please check out all of the other Billy Strings videos that I've done. There's a lot of new folks coming to Bluegrass through Billy, and I love it. It's awesome. I promise you'll appreciate what I'm doing here. Anyway, this is some much earlier Billy Strings playing, so I think a lot of this will be more attainable for people that are new to Bluegrass because these breaks tend to be more simple, more lick-based, and a little more repetitive. As always, if you're looking for the tabs of the 3 breaks that we're going to be talking about today, you can find those at lessonswithmarcel.com for free. And speaking of getting stuff for free, this video is sponsored by a product that so many of my students use, Strum Machine. Playing along with backing tracks is a great way to improve your rhythm, get used to playing with others, and just have more fun with your practice time. Now, Strum Machine is a backing track website specifically designed for Bluegrass musicians, so it comes with over 1,000 Bluegrass and old-time songs already on there, but you can also create your own chord progressions for your own songs, which we're going to be playing with today. Now, Strum Machine has been nice enough to offer my subscribers an extended 30-day free trial if you visit strummachine.com/Marcel. Remember, supporting sponsors means supporting this channel, so if you like this content, please consider checking out Strum Machine. Alright, back to Billy Strings. Before we learn this break, let's go over a couple licks and scales that are going to help us understand what Billy's thinking a little bit. So the chords underneath this break are G, C, and D. Now for the G chords, Billy Strings really prefers G major pentatonic with a couple of blue notes. Now the important thing to understand here is that G major pentatonic is very bland, and the blue notes are like spices, that minor third and that dominant seventh, and you never want to over-season. So let's listen to the bland G major pentatonic first, and then let's listen to it with all of the spices in there. So now that we know what Billy's doing over the G chord, let's talk about what he's doing over the C chord and the D chord. Interestingly enough, whenever he comes up to the D chord, he tends to strum it. And then there's a D chord at the very end that he just ignores. So you don't have to worry about that. However, over the C chord, he does play this same lick over and over again. And it's kind of reminiscent of the lick that Molly Tuttle favors in her White Freightliner arrangement. Anyway, let's take a listen. The last thing we might look at in this break is how Billy uses cross-picking. Now, cross-picking is kind of a big subject. I encourage you to watch my video essay I did on cross-picking. You can find out a lot more information. The really short way to say it is that there's 3 note groupings and that you can play them with down, down, up, or you can alternate pick them. Down, up, down, up, down, up. Anyway, here's the phrase. Now that you've heard all the little phrases and ideas, here's Billy's 3 breaks isolated. Use your ears, try to identify all the things that we've talked about, and don't worry, you'll get the tab for this later. Dust in a baggie. Alright, now let's dig deep. Let's do the play-by-play of all 3 breaks that Billy does. Before we do that, a quick shout out to my friend Luke Black. Luke Black is an awesome guitar player. You should follow him on Instagram, and he does transcriptions for me when I get too busy with YouTube and Skype lessons and all the other things that I do. So thank you so much, Luke, for transcribing this. It's a great transcription. I plan to only ignore a little bit of it. So before we do this big breakdown, I need a backing track to play along to. So we're going to build one with Strum Machine, and I've been told that this process is really easy, but I haven't done it yet, so we're going to figure it out together. But I'm going to click New Song, and let's see what happens. Enter song name, Dust in a Baggie. Choose a key. Billy does this in the key of G. Oh, okay, cool. So we're going to call this breaks. Basic keyboard editing controls. So I know the first measure is all G. Second measure is all G. Wow, this actually is really easy. Not that I thought I was going to have to pretend it was easy, but this is really nice. Hopefully I'm doing this all correctly. Okay, cool. I just click Save Song. Add this song to a list. Yeah, let's make a new list. We'll call it YouTube videos. So now we have the chart finished. Hey. So that's super cool. Let's see what else we can change here. So Billy plays it somewhere between 130, 140 kind of area. It fluctuates a little bit. Let's aim for 120. So we're going to do it a little bit under the original tempo. I think that's a good goal to hit. And then let's look at these other settings here. These are all real instruments, by the way, which I think is really interesting. These timing settings here, these are ones that I altered earlier. And so you can actually adjust how much something is behind or ahead of the beat. There's our backing track. Let's play along to it a little. All right, so now that you've heard me play the first break, let's go through, let's break it down, let's see what's going on. So here we go, first phrase. You're probably going to recognize a lot of this is major pentatonic. We got our blue notes that we talked about. There's the minor third, there's the dominant seventh. If you're not into using those words, it's actually a little bit okay. You can get used to the feelings that they create. For instance, the minor third is generally a safer, more acceptable choice than the dominant seventh. The dominant seventh can be a little spicy for some situations. It also tends to imply a seventh chord, like G7 moving to C, so in this case it makes a lot of sense. There are a couple little things that I want to point out in here. For instance, Luke wrote in this ghosted note. Totally ignored that when I played it. I'm not worried too much about that. I mean, there's going to be a couple more moments like this where I'm playing my own kind of sloppy, Billy Strings is playing his own kind of sloppy, and we're getting real close to each other. But rather than try to be sloppy in the exact same way as Billy Strings, I'm being myself a little bit. Let's look over here. So this is an interesting thing that's actually happens a couple times in Billy tunes, and he always does this with Dust In A Baggie. In modern versions, he has this opening run that he does, and these two notes are normally a pickup. These two notes, we normally expect to see them before beat 1, right? They happen on beat 4 of the previous measure. And instead he puts them on beat 1, and it's really strange. I think he does it on purpose. Okay, let's look at this. This is the phrase we keep seeing over the C chord. There's a couple things to talk about here. Number one, there's a little bend there, a little tug on the note. I actually didn't really play that in my playthroughs. The next thing that you'll notice is this note kind of gets ghosted in all these interpretations. Sometimes it sounds like he's hitting it more than others. It's a little interesting. But in any case, it happens on beat 3 of this measure. So if you're looking for a way to count this measure and play it, beat 3 you can treat as a rest. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 3. And that, I think that helps a lot actually to play that rhythm. Here he strums it out. When I did my playthrough, I didn't worry about these strums super specifically. I'm sure I didn't strum exactly like that, because why be exactly like Billy when you can be yourself a little bit? Let's look at this here. This phrase, we also get some interesting things. Sounds like this. So this phrase is all eighth notes, so if I was going to count it, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now Luke was really diligent here. He wrote this ghosted open B string right there. This is kind of a rough moment for me. You know, some of these moments, I understand this is an early Billy Strings recording. Some of these moments, I would rather not play the same note twice in a row. There's some moments where it makes a lot of sense, but this one I don't think is really one of them. This phrase right here, all of these B string notes are kind of gently strummed, all of the upstrokes in this measure. So if I put in the pick strokes, it would be down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Everything that's an upstroke there, kind of just hitting a couple strings. Right? Since the whole break is kind of messy, if you hear stuff like that, feel free to take on a little bit of that messy character, and that's fine. Here we go, D chord. Strums the D chord, like I said he would. But this phrase we see, I think, in every break. Sometimes there's pull-offs, sometimes there's other things. I just picked all the way through it. Here's the cross-picking section that we practiced in the beginning. It sounds like this. These little strums are different every single time. How he gets out of it is different every time. So I just did whatever strum I did in each break. Don't feel like you got to follow this to the letter. That would be silly. Here we go. This is our lick again. You can hear last time he played this open G string, and this time he stayed on that same note. Whether you want to actually make those decisions, whether you want to ghost this note or not, it's all up to you. It's still going to be the same phrase. I'm encouraging you to be creative here. This phrase right here with the repeated note, a lot of times what happens to people with repeated notes is they lose where they are. It destroys the form. So let's make sure we can count this measure and we understand how it works. It sounds like this. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. Making sure that you play exactly one measure of that repeated note. As we come down here, this is a big old string of eighth notes, and this is a pretty classic Billy Strings phrase. Billy likes to repeat these notes. He does it even more now. This, where you play G run and you hop up for another octave of G, it's a really interesting move. It can be tough to do fast, and sometimes this note turns into a little bit of a strum, gets a little sloppy. That's sort of on brand for this break, so don't kill yourself about nailing this, little target. And that's the whole first break. So why don't you listen to a performance of me playing the second break, and then we'll talk about that one. So as we look at more and more of these breaks, we're going to start seeing a lot of the same components over and over again. So I'm going to talk less and less because we've already seen it. In the beginning here, we actually do get some new stuff. So let's talk about that. All of these eighth notes he plays over the first G chord. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. With big strokes. Down, up, 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 down, up. This is a line cliche. He's connecting the third of the chord with the fifth of the chord. It sounds like the beginning of Foggy Mountain Breakdown. It's also the first lick that Tony Rice uses in the Blue Ridge Cabin Home Break. It's also the first lick that Tony Rice uses in the Big Spy Camera Break. So go listen to those and you can find more context for why the lick is cool and historically why it makes sense. Over here we got major pentatonic with the same added blue notes. There's the dominant seventh, minor third, dominant seventh. Here we go. This is that same phrase again. 3. Here's our repeated note phrase. We already counted this guy, right? 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. We've already seen a phrase like this. Remember, Billy likes to repeat these notes. And all of these B strings here are kind of gently strummed. They don't have to have, insane accuracy or anything. This phrase sounds like this. Counting it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. This is the phrase we already saw. And actually, continuing, it's more of what we already saw. This cross-picking phrase, remember, he gets out of it however he wants. Here's a little variation of our C phrase. Maybe put a strum in the middle now. Let's jump ahead to the ending phrase here. We run into the same problem here where he's playing the open B string twice. Let's just see what it sounds like. There's definitely a way to make this line, contextually make more sense. So for instance, if I changed it to, something like this, this is maybe more something the modern Billy would play. Right, that line has more of a linear feel to it. It goes down a path instead of it kind of wandering around and then hitting the same note twice. Once again, young Billy Strings. He's still just figuring things out. That's the second break. Why don't you listen to a recording of me playing the third break? So here's where I think you can really start to see that these breaks are a little formulaic, right? We've already looked at 2 of them that had some different approaches. The third one is going to be full of things that we've already seen, but in true Billy fashion from this time period, he's giving just a couple new ideas every single time. So even though he's retreading the same ground, he keeps just adding a couple little things in there to keep the interest level up. So looking at this first phrase, we've already seen these 4 notes, right? We already talked about this. This was the Blue Ridge Cabin Home, Big Spike Hammer, Foggy Mountain Breakdown. Those are those notes. All of this, still that same major pentatonic sound that we always see right here with the minor third and the dominant 7th. Very Billy sound. We've already seen this C lick. He does it over every C chord. He strums out the G chord. And this measure is new, but we've already seen this walk down to the D chord, right? This. We've already seen that, but this measure right here, that's what I'm interested in. This is Billy's new addition to the phrase, and it sounds like this. Almost all just a bunch of 8th notes. It has 1 quarter note in there. It sounds like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Pick strokes. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, 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 up, down, up, down, up, down. We've already seen this phrase before, even if he got a little messy with it. That's the main gist of the phrase, right? Seen this line before. Good. The next phrase, we've also seen this before. We know how this phrase works. And we know how this phrase works. Like, this is a repeated G note. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. Now here at the end, you can see Billy's actually giving us a triplet, something unique. These triplet moments, people write these in different ways. This is how Luke chose to write this phrase. And you can write it like that too. And if you write it like that, you can kind of, these are actually 2 different rhythms. I know that they're 2 different rhythms, but a lot of times in bluegrass music, we write it like this if these 2 notes are just as close together as possible. And this is the rhythm how I just played it. Anyway, that's all of the breaks. That's all 3 of the breaks. And I think this definitely will shine a new light on these breaks in this recording. I don't want to sound like a broken record, and I really don't want to sound like I'm being mean to Billy, but Billy's young in this recording. It's sloppy, and he plays a lot of the same things over and over again. So if you're learning this, put your own character on it. Why not? That's what the music is about. That's how bluegrass has always been played. With that under our belts, let's check out these 3 breaks with the tab overhead. Remember that bluegrass is an improvisational genre, so learning these breaks note for note isn't really what this is about. It's more about breaking it down, digesting some of the pieces, and seeing if you can use them in your own playing as well. Also, as always, if things are a little bit too fast, you can just hit that settings wheel, go to playback speed, and you can slow things down so it's a little bit easier to play along to.
Dust in a baggie.
Alright, if you liked that video, remember to check out strummachine.com/Marcel for a free 30-day trial of their product. We love the good folks over at Strum Machine, so I really hope you check it out. Now, you can also check out my website, lessonswithmarcel.com. That's where you can get the free tab for today's lesson. There's other stuff on there. There's a bunch of other arrangements, and there's merch, and there's articles. You should go check it out, I promise. Anyway, I'll see you next week.